I know who I want to talk to. Chaos in the UK. Hey, Chaos.
Hi, Eric.
Hey. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Awesome. I'm so excited that you called back. You know, you've called before. You've been an awesome, follower of the show, even though we don't have the exact same opinion when it comes to religion. And last time you called in, I asked you at the end, why are you still holding on to theism? And could you call back? And you called back. I'm reading the notes. It says follow up on why I'm still holding on to theism from last week. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah. So I'd like to preface this discussion more for the chat than you, because you quite possibly already know this, but a lot of pagans, myself included, don't necessarily like going into all the spiritual experiences we've had.
Sure.
So I don't think it's going to inhibit the conversation at all, but if I reference specific experiences without going into them, that's just a bit of that's personal thing.
It's interesting because I know that I have baggage that I bring to the table when I talk to people about their personal experiences. And it is entirely steeped in my background of, in church, we would give, we would witness to each other.
Oh, yeah. Testimonies is a thing. It took a while to get out of my head.
It did. And if people are wondering, what do we mean by witnessing and testimony? If I was praying for a good parking spot when I went grocery shopping and there was a parking spot right at the front, and I said, thank you, Jesus. I could then go around and tell people, hey, I prayed and it was answered. Jesus got me a good parking spot. Anytime someone had something unexplained or had just a bout of good fortune, they would tell that story and kind of frame it in religious, framing, and then use that as evidence for the works of their God. And so when people call in to say, hey, I want to talk about my personal experience, I can't help but I bring that baggage with me and I go, okay, what makes this different from a religious testimony? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would love to know what experience you had. Go ahead, sorry.
So to be clear, I made an assumption. I've just realized that I just want to double check. Are you referring to my religious beliefs or my religious practices as to why I'm still holding on to them? Because those are two different questions.
Absolutely. I love that question. I feel like there's a lot of difference there. What I care about more is what you believe is true about the world, your ontological view. Because we can talk a lot about practices and a lot about tradition and things like that and its usefulness. But I kind of want to know, do you ontologically in the real world believe that there's a deity or deities?
Yes. I
Really?
will throw out there immediately, I'm not a classical theist. You throw the omni traits out. No.
Sure. Yeah. Omni-God is silly, for sure.
Yeah. So I have referenced on previous calls where I've called in an interest in philosophy. Actually, by and large, it's not the philosophical arguments for the gods that persuade me, though I think they can certainly be helpful in terms of going, well, what can we deduce from experiences we've had? Because mine is quite an experiential-based view.
Okay.
And it is definitely going to come right down to personal experiences, so we might as well start there, I guess.
So just so you know, as you talk about it, I'm going to be what I'm going to have in the back of my mind is this different from someone witnessing to me? And if it is, why? And if it isn't, then why is it convincing to chaos?
Sure. So this is a thing that I think might then be good to have discussed is I don't think my personal experiences should convince you.
Okay, so why do they convince you?
So they convince me because I have had first-hand experiences, including elements that are not transferable. I cannot convey to you the information that I processed in terms of sensory stuff that led me to that conclusion. And I think it can still be rational to believe based on other people's experiences if you really trust them and you think it's a really solid experience that would definitely lead to this conclusion and all the rest of it. I think that can be a conclusion, but I certainly don't expect anyone else to believe on the basis of my personal experiences.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Can it be rational to believe something that's not true?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. I think that there are people who, unfortunately, in abusive relationships can be gaslit into thinking that a certain set of events have happened that really didn't. And
yes,
based on their internal understanding of the world, it is consistent that whatever conclusions they came to were true, even if they're not true. I also think that the older we get, the more we think about what we did as kids, the more we kind of mythologize it, and it can get, turn into a fish story, become way bigger than it ever really was. But we're not intentionally being dishonest. We're just applying our viewpoint to the world, and sometimes that viewpoint doesn't really accurately click. And so if you believe that you can be rational about something that's not true, then how do you how do you determine that what you believe is true? Because I'm not going to argue with you on rational. If you think that it's rational, we can talk about your epistemology, but I kind of want to cut to the chase on it. Why do you think it's true?
Sure. So it is experiences I had in relation to the gods that I think I do not, genuinely don't have a better explanation for. Okay. Than it.
Give me an example, because I would love to know what you don't have a better explanation for. That's really interesting to me.
So, I will go into this a bit, but not too deeply. But I should preface this with, I have aphantasia. I can't visualize things. I can't see things in my mind's eye. I struggle to dream even. Dreams are a rare thing for me.
I totally get it. I have a degree of aphantasia. If I try really hard, I can summon up images of things that I've already seen. But if I were to try and create something that did not ever exist and that it's incredibly difficult for me. So I get it. We may be two colorblind people trying to describe color to the internet, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah. And so, because I am, at the very least, mostly aphantasic, that gives me an additional degree of, if I see something that feels impossible, and then I determine I'm not dehydrated, I've eaten properly, I've not consumed any alcohol or drugs recently, all the rest, trust my senses. Mm-hmm. There have been experiences where I think the best way I have to describe it is, I saw some people in an area directly in front of me. I looked away, I looked back. They weren't there, and there was no way for them to have gone anywhere. And I checked the surrounding area. Okay. It was literally in the middle of the woods in a big fuck-off clearing.
Okay. So
and that is something that I don't necessarily attribute to deities, but that I attribute to
maybe the supernatural.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah. So
I don't like the term supernatural because I don't think it's a coherent concept. But insofar as people use it,
I adore you, Chaos. I feel like we can have so much more in-depth conversation without having to get caught up on a lot of the minutia. So let's kind of think about it. Chaos, you have a cookie jar at your house. If you don't, we're just going to pretend you do. Someone steals a cookie from the cookie jar. Sure. What are the odds that it's your neighbor or Eric? That I traveled to the UK to steal a cookie from your cookie jar, or that your neighbor did?
Well, the odds are higher of my neighbor, but it's not impossible that it's you.
It's not impossible, no. What about if...
This is something Something I'll also acknowledge is, when I'm discussing experiences, I never discuss things with certainty, because I don't think we can have certainty beyond very few, personal interaction, things like I exist.
Okay, so it sounds like your baseline is like if we're both agnostic on whether or not we know for a fact a deity exists, but you're living your life as if one does or multiple do, and I'm living my life as if they don't. Which one's preferable?
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think either is necessarily actually preferable in this situation.
Really?
Both work.
Because
theism is equally pragmatic to atheism.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Phlogiston. Have you ever looked up phlogiston?
Oh.
How about
it rings a bell.
How about
I don't recall
the four humors? Maybe. No, maybe. Chaos, are you still there? Uh-oh, I might have lost Chaos. Chaos, I'm going to keep you on the line while I talk, just in case you come back. But where I'm going with it is, and I know I've made this example before, or done this example before, phlogiston for a long time was what people thought caused fire, and that everything contained some degree of phlogiston, and however much phlogiston it had, when you lit it on fire, that phlogiston would be burned up, and then it would be dephlogenated. It would be burnt. Because people approached science with this idea that phlogiston existed, it hampered discovery. It got in the way of lines of inquiry because people already assumed something that they didn't have good evidence for. And I think that we could have moved forward with our understanding of the world faster if we hadn't made that baseline assumption. Chaos is gone. I'm so sad. Chaos, thank you for calling in. Call in again next week. I don't want to have this conversation without you because I think that it would be unfair to you. But for the people who are watching, I would love to know in the comments, especially under the clip that this goes out, what you think, whether or not you think that those baseline assumptions are getting in the way of discovery, because I'm really interested in it.